Professor Wijesinha, a draft policy on reconciliation coming out of the Office of the President's Advisor on Reconciliation. How does it complement or support other reconciliation-related government mechanisms?
Well, I don't think any other mechanism exists specifically for reconciliation. There is the Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission, which made a report, which of course is now subject to a lot of controversy. Because I think there are efforts to emphasize some aspects of it more than others, especially in Geneva at the moment. Our own efforts were really based on a conference we had a few months back, and at the end of it there were suggestions that we really need a national policy. So I went ahead with people who had been involved in organizing that, and had a series of discussions and consultations, which also took a lot of input from the work I have been doing in the North in setting up reconciliation committees at district and divisional level. Now these of course have had the full support of the government people involved, the governor, the district secretaries. So these I think have been going quite well because they brought up a lot of issues which I think public debate and discourse doesn't go into very much. So on the basis of all those suggestions, what came in at the discussions we've had, we drafted the policy. I had a lot of assistance from some of the members of my Reconciliation Youth Forum, in particular Salma Yusuf, and who also did a lot of study along with Pushpi Veerakuna of other models in other countries. And so we did this draft, had a lot of discussions, and then about 2.5 weeks ago, I actually sent it to all leaders of political parties. Of course, I had sent it to the president initially, and he said, go ahead. And then I sent it also to a lot of the people of the discussion groups I have been working with. You know, for instance, there's a cross-party group which includes NGOs called the Council for Liberal Democracy. Then we have Religion, Education and Pluralism. We have a civil society partners. So people who are interested in reconciliation, I sent this to. But then I think what happened is that one newspaper heard about it and rang me. And I thought hard and thought, no, this should not be confidential. There's nothing, you know, secretive about it. So I told that particular editor, I'll send it to you, but I will send it to all papers as well. And then of course it became a wholly public document, which is a good thing, I think. But the first consultation I'd actually planned to the people outside the group that formulated it was scheduled for the 19th, and I had asked people to send me their reflections before, if possible.
So like you're hoping to finalize the document sometime in the near future?
Well, I would hope so. I mean, the reactions so far have been very good. Obviously, you can't expect everyone to agree with everything, but I think most people who've seen it have said it's a very, very balanced account.
Now, does the draft document have any bearing on what's happening at the UNHRC sessions in Geneva at the moment, Professor?
Well, I think very probably it was mentioned there last week because some people had been involved in formulating it, had been to Geneva. And I think, I don't know what the reactions were like, but I think it's particularly important, and I hope it can come up, simply because I think it makes it clear that reconciliation is the business of Sri Lankans and we are concentrating on it. We have done a lot of work on it. I think the President appointing me and facilitating all the work I've been doing in the North, plus the meetings I've had, suggests a deep commitment. But of course the issues we have identified are not perhaps those who want to turn it into a political football would be concerned about. For instance, in the document, I hope you've had a look at it, it's on www Reconciliation Youth Forum. It should have gone on the Reconciliation website, but we had a problem with that. I just checked on it with the people who've been running it. They changed their server. But that should go up now on www.peaceinsrilanka.org. And I hope people will look at it and discuss it. But as you know, we've divided it into 3 sections. And in all of them, the emphasis is not on one particular area or the other, because I think it has to be really a package. Now, most people who look at it will say this is more important than that. That's fine. So long as they all recognize that everyone is sensitive about different things, we must care about each other's sensitivities.
So what do you think is its most important feature, Professor? It's a 12-page document and you say it's very comprehensive. What would the important...
Well, I think it focuses attention on the areas in which we need to move. So for instance, on what I call restoration, while I believe very strongly the government has done a fantastic job on infrastructure, on returning the displaced, on the rehabilitation programs, on the provision of services to the people to a better extent than they ever had before. I think we need to do much more on human resources development, on providing both training that the people want, and it was universal, not only in the Kilimmanjaro areas, which suffered a lot, but even in Jaffna, they were asking for more training in particular areas. And I think also we need to move on encouraging entrepreneurship so that the very profitable economic, let's say, resources of the North will actually go to those people. You know, of course, it's an integrated economy, but I don't want the farmers, etc., of that area to suffer, and they know this. They want the training to take things forward. They want more agricultural training, agribusiness. Then the second area is what I would loosely describe as the political. And again, there's a lot of emphasis saying this is about devolution. It's not only about devolution, it's about empowerment. We have to empower our people. And I think we need to recognize that there are, in a sense, three layers. One is the fundamental layer, which is where the people really have their lives affected by decisions being made, and we must give them the opportunity to participate and input, and in particular for things like education, health, transport. Those are essential, and it's not about either politicians at the centre or in the province taking those decisions. The consultation must be there. Then of course there is the provincial level, and I think we need to streamline the provincial administrations. For instance, there's a lot of chaos about what's called the concurrent list, and it makes a lot of sense to streamline it, put whatever is appropriate to the province, other things to the centre, and then decide what concurrence means. It doesn't mean one takes precedence over the other. It means there must be discussion before you resolve things. Sure. Then of course there is also the question of the particular powers, which is being discussed in terms of the bilateral discussion as well as the all-party conference, which we, all-party select committee, we hope will go forward. But there's also the fact that when you take decisions at the centre, they must have much greater input from the provinces and have safeguards. You see, one of our biggest problems was majoritarianism that led, I think, to decisions which were not meant to be anti-anybody, like the Official Languages Act was initially meant to dethrone English. But in the process, because of political rivalries, it turned anti-Tamil, which was terrible. Similarly with, what's the thing? The positive discrimination with regard to university entry, which was a very bitter pill, because it was very badly implemented. But the original concept that the more deprived areas should have greater advantages is actually a concept accepted all over the world, but you must also then make sure there is provision for the others, which we never did. So those are areas where any decision made of policy at the centre must have greater input from the provinces. There are several ways of doing this. One, of course, is the most obvious one of a second chamber, which allows greater representation. But we also need to integrate the Tamil community into decision making through more executive power at the centre. Sure. Then the third area is the area of what some people call restitution, and you know, they're going on and on about war crimes. But in fact, while it is clear that where there is prima facie evidence, there should be investigation and prosecution as necessary, I think what is more important is restitution in terms of making sure that people who have lost people have closure on this. So that you need to have very clear identification of who perhaps has gone missing. Mrs. Charles, the GA in Vaune, is doing an excellent job on tracing children. But what she's doing there, we need also to replicate for adults. So there are all sorts of areas. Compensation, again, we've said, look, if people are missing and you can't find them, you can't have a thing of blanket compensation. You know, we know that in July 1983, a lot of people who suffered got nothing, and other people got rent-seeking efforts. But what we have suggested is where families have been deprived, there should be more positive ways of financial support in job creation, not handouts, for the rest of the family. So, you know, widows and so on, there should be strengthening of a system that gives them livelihood when they've been deprived of livelihood because of debts. So those are areas where I think you need a comprehensive pattern.
So it sounds like the draft document is striking all the right chords. About the process of implementing it, Professor, what would be the first steps and how would you like to see it being implemented now?
Well, as I've said all along, I think you need a Minister for Reconciliation. I think it needs to be a senior person who is capable of coordinating the work of several ministries. I don't think it helps at all to have what we had last time for the interim recommendations, which were excellent recommendations, which was what was called an interministerial committee that never had very strict reporting obligations. Now, one of the things I've done with regard to the Human Rights Action Plan, which, as you know, I was secretary when we prepared it, and let me say, I think without me, we wouldn't have gone so far, because we moved very quickly. But then, because there was a hiatus and no ministry, it took a long time to get cabinet approval. Now it has got cabinet approval, and my former minister, Rajiva Wijesinha, was put in charge of the interministerial committee, and I'm glad that he has enough trust in me to make me the convener of the task force, because frankly he knows how efficient I am in terms of working with people. And of course the way I work with people is I find people better than me to actually do the work. So I have this wonderful collection of people on it: the present Secretary of the Ministry of Justice, the former Secretary Ms. Wijesinha, the head of the NCPA, all of whom I know are amongst the most efficient public servants we have. So it's really my job to make sure that they are empowered to do their work. Mr. Wijesinha had national languages, who's passionately committed to languages. We had, lots of very able people. I'm sorry, I should mention more names, but I mean, who have really contributed very heavily to action in their areas, even without the National Action Plan. For instance, when I was in the North recently, a lot of the administrators there said how impressed they were that the chairman of the NCP actually comes to the North regularly and makes things happen. So it's people with that sort of energy you need. So my role is really to coordinate and make sure that these very able people who are deeply committed can move forward. We've entered into discussions with the Human Rights Commission, where again you have a very idealistic chairman, Justice Priyantha Pereira. You have very good staff whom I found very keen. They came to consultations I had earlier, before I was appointed convener, on prisoners, women and children, where I felt that a lot of excellent material in the President's budget speech was not being taken forward quickly enough. And I think we owe it to the President to actually implement his ideas as quickly as possible.
So on the ground, have people started to feel that the government is really starting to do something and bring about?
As I said, I found extremely positive views in the divisional and district reconciliation committees in Kilinochchi, in Mullaitivu, in Mana. Of course, I felt very happy that they could also bring up problems, but they didn't bring it up in terms of government is doing nothing. It came up in terms, for instance, the schools. They said, they welcome the sheer energy with which buildings have been put, materials have gone, books have gone, but they said we don't have teachers in essential subjects. Hospitals, for instance, Chettukalam, they started by telling me what a beautiful new hospital they have, but they said, can we make sure we have doctors there? And when I checked, we have very good RHDSers who are doing their best. But some doctors, for obvious reasons, don't like to go and live there. So when they come from Vavuniya, it's late. When they go back, it's late. So you need to develop systems of encouraging doctors to be there. But I was very touched in places like Mullaitivu and Kilinochchi, the RHDSers are very dedicated people. Kilinochchi has a wonderful program of trying to make sure malnutrition reduces. And its terms of educational, a lot more awareness has to be built up. But I was very pleased with the reactions of the people.
And finally, Professor, to recap, addressing the reconciliation issue in Sri Lanka, are we doing it right? What should we be doing instead?
Well, let me put it this way. I mean, one of my problems, I believe anything that should be done quickly and thoroughly. This is not a characteristic of government, of any government in the world, I'm afraid. They tend to go slow because those are bureaucracies. Now, therefore, I think we need a new model of moving forward quickly in areas where we need to move forward, because every day that there's delay, people are suffering. So there are certain areas where you can't allow slowness to, trump commitment. So I think we need a few new models of delivery. Now, these are areas where, as I said, the Presidential Task Force in the North, which was a mechanism for swift delivery, did very well. There's deep appreciation of the roads, the electricity, the water supplies, the buildings. That's fantastic, and I think that's simply because they set up a mechanism. Mr. Basharaj is very energetic, but so is Mr. Devaratna, the Secretary of the Task Force. You call him, he responds promptly. But I'm afraid there are some people in office who take a long time. Now, that should not happen. You should not have to go to the head. Mr. Rajapaksa and Mr. Devaratna solve a problem immediately, but how do you make this energy apply across the board? So these are areas where I think we need a new model and better training of our public servants. that is actually very, very important in terms of the Human Rights Action Plan. We were discussing this morning, I had a meeting of the task force, how we really need to make sure that our public servants move
forward. Professor Wijesinha, thank you for sharing with us your work and insights as well on reconciliation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.